Good day, everyone, and welcome to the only show that you're going to view today that you absolutely do not have to watch unless you want to, and that makes us so happy that you're here. Right. I, as usual, am your host, Scott G. Davis of Myth of Logic, and the only person on this panel today with a birthday is my good friend, Mr. Christopher Clark. Happy birthday, my friend.
Thank you. As you can see, all my smiley face balloons, got my 51 of them for my 51 years. That my family had thrown all over the ground when I woke up this morning and got down. But I don't know if you can see it. I'll show it real quick. Look at all those balloons.
Woohoo!
And that's only part of them. There's more in the other room.
That's a mess of smiling faces to greet you on your birthday.
I'm a mess of 51 years. So excited. Had a great birthday so far. Really looking forward to this. This will be the icing on the cake for me.
Woo, yeah. Well, friends, today on the program, we have Mr. Glenn Rosenstein. Glenn is a successful multi-Grammy award-winning record producer, audio engineer, mixer, and studio partner. Over a career spanning more than 4 decades, his projects have contributed to record sales exceeding 300 million units. If you're followers of this program and things that we've done in the past, you know we're big prog fans, and you should know, if you don't, about Ekelin and the albums that Glenn has done with Ekelin. But there is so much more to the grand scoping cinemascope picture that is Glenn Rosenstein. So we want to get into that today. Glenn, how are you today, man?
I'm grateful to be here, and happy birthday to Chris.
Thank you.
Congratulations, my friend. I wish I was 51 years.
I said 51 and I knew. I was like, these guys are going to be like 51. I remember when I was 51.
You're a kid. You're a pup.
I'll take it. I'll take that. I'm a pup at 51. That's fine.
Well, Glenn, before we get to what you're doing currently, and we definitely want to talk about all of that, tell us a little bit about the earlier parts of your career. As I understand it, you focused mainly on being a guitarist early in your career and switched over to the manipulation of sound in all its forms. Tell us a little bit about your beginnings, Glenn.
Well, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, before Brooklyn became the hotbed of whatever it became the hotbed of. And I was in that area at a time when garage bands were an enormous factor. You'd walk down the streets after school and hear people practicing and doing cover tunes of like Vanilla Fudge and Cream and, that kind of stuff. So I am obviously dating myself. And like so many of my cohorts, immediately went out and bought a guitar and, was in love with the Rolling Stones. And then later, as time slowly progressed, bands like Iron Butterfly, which were kind of the prototype early progressive Steppenwolf.
Metamorphosis.
Yeah.
Of course, I heard Yes. And that was both elating and devastating because you can't beat Steve Howe.
Makes you go, man, that's awesome. And man, I can never be that. Wow.
I did, I was a guitarist. I took lessons from the time I was like 8 years old. And of course, had that moment of realization, that this was a great way to meet women and friends and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't look the way I look right now, But the long story short is that progressive rock really, and I know, this is kind of the basis of part of why we're here, but progressive rock really influenced me. And Yes, and Gentle Giant and a couple of other bands like that really became the framework for education that created opportunities, believe it or not, to then further my career into less guitar playing, because I realized early on, maybe not great, maybe not a great thing. But I did have an ear for music, and it worked out that There were things like engineering other people's records and producing other people's records. And I was very, very lucky and very fortunate enough to have sustained a career for as long as I have, essentially doing that for a living.
Marvelous.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, tell us what after this initial period, where did you first work as an engineer? What was your earliest experiences working as an engineer?
Well, a couple of friends of mine and I worked over the summer to buy, when the technology in professional recording studios was 8-track, we saved together collaboratively and bought a 4-track recorder. And we started getting known in our neighborhood as like, oh, these are the guys that can record us. So unbeknownst to me, that it was kind of a form of record production because everybody was so remarkably inexperienced, myself included. We were not only recording bands in a documentary style, just kind of doing the do, but we were participating in rewriting the songs, getting like the real education of how does music work together? How do you get from point A to point B? What's the process for tracking, for overdubbing, ultimately for mixing, even with 4 tracks? Very Beatlesque,
Well, you weren't just a recording engineer, you were producing, you were helping.
Well, I know it at the time, Chris. That was kind of the thing. I didn't know that there was such a thing as a record producer. Of course, right. I heard George Martin, but I didn't know, and many people kind of still don't really know what a record producer actually does, right. And it's so many different things. It's kind of like being a director and a producer in film.
Right.
So, sometimes even a cinematographer. But what was great about that was it really gave me a background long before there was the proliferation of all of these recording schools. So there was really in New York City, like literally just one school, Institute of Audio Research, which I didn't attend because I was, a working class kid I didn't have the money to invest in it. And again, saved with a couple of buddies of mine, and we bought inexpensive for the time recording equipment.
Right.
Beyond that, I fell in love and still enjoyed playing guitar. But as I went through my education career, in high school, I was like the guitarist guy. And then in college, I kind of realized that there were about 100 guitarists better than I was. And then, of course, getting into it professionally and understanding this is not how I'm going to make a living.
Right.
Right.
I still play on the records I work on, and having that semi-expert narrative really, really helped. As you can imagine, I mean, look, you guys play, you know what I'm talking about. Sure. Having that background is good, but instead of me playing guitar, I hire the best guitarists on the planet, and they play what I wish I could play. But yeah, growing up in New York City meant same as if you were growing up in Los Angeles, you had access to where records were being made.
Yeah, and that's a big difference. That's good that you were there.
You didn't have to do anything other than take a subway into Manhattan from Brooklyn, and I could be standing in front of Electric Lady with a slice of pizza and a Coke, hoping to see what's going on inside of there, which until I became a pro, never actually did. But, there was a kind of obsessive component to it that was, my buds and I would cut class from high school, get on a subway train, and hang out in front of recording studios. I don't know what we had hoped to see. I don't know, that there was any component of it other than, watching a door open and close. But it was a real thing for me.
That's a cool thing because it's kind of like you want to be a part of that world in whatever way you can do it. So if I'm sitting out there hoping to get a glimpse, it's because of your love of that world. You want to be in there. Well, I get it. I get that.
Chris, it's kind of what's happened with podcasts in a way. If you think about it,
yeah.
I was living semi-vicariously because it really was not insertion at the level that we're, talking about right this moment. Some of the other podcasts that are prog related or music related, etc. It gives that kind of insight. In those days, there was no internet. There were libraries, and those libraries didn't have anything nearly as current. There were not tons of magazines about it. The only way you could really experience it was either to buy the gear and teach yourself, which there was a component of, or hang out and hope for the best, and that's really kind of how it worked initially for me. Right. So my younger brother, who's also in music, and we are actually working on records right now together, which is great fun.
And we want to hear about that.
Yeah. But he had a buddy who, long story short, my brother's friend had two other brothers, and their dad was a doctor, and they had some money, and they were looking for somebody to put together a PA system so that they could go out and tour. And I knew enough about it at a time when many, many people didn't. And I wound up being their sound guy and traveled somewhat up and down the East Coast and did live sound, which was not where I wanted to live, but I was a sponge and I wanted to learn everything about everything, whether it was live mic technique. Again, there was no place you could learn about this. You could only learn by doing. Right. And they were a cover band, and we were playing, or they were playing all kinds of stuff in clubs. And here I was, humping gear and setting up and doing live sound. And I kind of knew that I had an affinity for it.
It was cool.
It was, again, no arrogance, no ego. I just knew that I not only liked it, but I was doing a decent job.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, that kind of prodded me. I wanted to finish college because I also understood that the entertainment business is fickle and could be so I finished college, and for the 6 months after I graduated from college, I was looking for a job in the music industry. I interned at Arista Records during college because I was on the radio station in college as well. And, kind of sense of what working at a label would be like at the time was not really for me. I wanted to be involved in the creative. So anyway, to get this a little bit shorter, I got a copy of the Manhattan Yellow Pages and cold called every recording studio in Manhattan.
Nice.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Like shameless. And it's like, I've got 6 months. If I don't do this, I'm going to, maybe I'd work in television, at entry level, or maybe I'd work in radio, entry level, but this was my aspiration. And there was a woman who was a studio manager for the power station, in New York City. I'm sure you've heard of that studio. If you haven't, I would encourage your listeners to look it up, because they were arguably, especially in the 80s and 90s, the center point for amazing New York record production.
Wow.
And I got, somehow or other, I got through the receptionist, Scott. I don't know how the fuck I did this. I got her on the, remember, I'm in my early 20s. I don't have much experience in business or anything. I get her on the phone and she's like, I'm chatting her up to the best of my ability. Look, I'm really interested. I'm self-taught, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, Glenn, you seem like a really nice guy. Things are slow right now. Give me a call back in about 6 months to a year and we'll take a look at it. And I don't know what compelled me to say it, but I was like, look, it's slow right now, but it's perfect because I can be shown your methodology. And when things get better, which they will, I will be totally trained.
And she bought it. She bought it.
Quiet. The phone got quiet. And about 30 seconds later, Lourdes Keene was her name. And I'm still in touch with her, by the way. Here it is. I'm not going to say how many years later. But she actually, well, I'll get into it in a moment. But she said, come in on Monday. And I had my first job at a professional recording studio at the power station in New York.
Awesome.
Now,
very cool.
it was very cool. Went from this cover band doing Bruce Springsteen to working initially as a gopher, and a receptionist, to then inevitably assisting. But the first, I went from Springsteen cover band to The River was like, and I was, I have no shame. I was like,
Good.
are you fucking kidding me?
You're gonna fit right in here.
My first day of work was witnessing the last day of Scary Monsters, David Bowie's record, where I don't know if you recall, but at the very end of the record, it sounds like the tape runs out and it's still kind of flapping against the heads and making a noise. I watched them record that.
That's awesome. That's just so awesome.
So, the glory of me, but that was an enormous, Chris, an enormous jump up. And all of a sudden, I went from being a guy with a slice of pizza and a Coke sitting outside of Electric Lady
to there. You're there. You're inside.
Getting inside. And, the rest
is history.
Now, when did Sigma come in? Is that later or?
Oh yeah, I worked at Power Station for 2 years, and it was evident to me that there was not going to be a quick escalation from being an assistant to being an engineer. And my impatience was actually a good thing. Bob Clearmountain, now he doesn't. Bob Clearmountain made a phone call to a gentleman named Jerry Block, who all these years later I'm still partnered with. We're actually working on product together, but he was running Sigma at the time, and Bob called him up and said, "Look, there's this guy here that you should really know." And I went in for an interview, and I started then immediately as an assistant, understanding that the path to engineering was going to be much, much quicker. Nobody at Power Station was leaving.
Right.
Nobody at Power Station was.
Why would they?
Right. It's kind of like a stagnant situation. It's not that they don't want to give you a shot. It's that no one who would be moving for us to give you a shot's moving. So I get that. Yeah, that makes sense.
And look, the discography that came out of Power Station really was, especially in that era, incomparable.
Yeah.
I witnessed, I don't want to say I worked on, because I was not a creative part of most of those records, but Springsteen, Dire Straits, David Bowie, Diana Ross, just really the who's who of the music industry in New York City at that time, and still to this day. I did I'm going to name drop, so I'm warning you.
Do it. That's why you're here, Glenn.
I love it, man. Name drop away.
Yeah. Do it.
And I feel like we know each other now for years. That it's not ego at all. It's just part of the story. So the upshot of it is I worked with Carly Simon in the New York Philharmonic right pre-COVID. And, that place is, in spite of the fact that I'm involved with Fame Recording Studio in Muscle Shoals, etc., that Studio A room is my favorite room. And I am so grateful that Berkeley and a very, very cool private equity firm saved that building from being taken down. The air rights above that building nowadays is worth so much money, and they really needed to find something. So anyway, I digress, but having that as a basis, having those couple of years at the Power Station really made a difference. It was great. So in spite of the fact that I was not able to be a full-fledged recording engineer there, that next step into Sigma, which was a very, very different thing. I was initially, oh, dang, man. This is all like disco dance records. I went from working, on records, some of the people I mentioned to you, to working with the Village People and working with Ashford Simpson and Gladys Knight and the Pips and Stephanie Mills. And I in retrospect, everything's mythology, right? In retrospect, it's all mythic. But at the time, I was like, I'm a rock and roll guy. I grew up in Brooklyn. I want to, I want that thing. And to be working on dance records in that moment, it wasn't an embarrassment, but it was definitely not the world I thought I was going to wind up in.
Right.
Little did I know that things inevitably, because of how important dance remixing became, that would be really my entree to a bunch of bands and artists like Talking Heads, U2, Madonna, Tears for Fears, Tom Tom Club, the Ramones. I mean, I never would have thought that Sigma would have been the conduit,
right,
the staff engineer, to be able to get that level of of clientele,
right,
because that's what it was all about. When we were in the studio and actually making the records, of course, it was that creative thing that both Scott and Chris, you feel that because you're making records. But the business side of it was, how do I continue and expand to a place where I can work with contemporaries who are either really influential culturally or are creating enough work that I didn't have to have a day job,
Right.
to do it.
Well, that's the key there. I mean, those a lot of that music might not be to your taste, but
Right.
Certainly everybody watching this program has heard of at least most, if not all, of the names that you've brought up. And you got to eat.
Well, not only that, you never know when you take a first step on a path where that path is going to wind to. Ever.
Exactly. Chris, you hit both of you guys hit the nail on the head. And there is another component to it. As much as we might love progressive rock, the concept of progressive is the liberal use of all kinds of influences.
Yeah.
Had I not had the shift over to Sigma, which originated in Philadelphia, it was all the TSOP, Sound of Philly stuff that was all very R&B and soul music.
Yeah.
I was a fan of like Al Green and, certainly other, R&B stuff. But again, my heart was with progressive rock. But the exposure to it, beyond simply having to listen to it, but actually having to become expert in it, was an education process that, had I had my druthers, I never would have had.
Right. You wouldn't have even done it. And then you wouldn't have had that.
Why would we do that? Here we are sitting, on a podcast that centers around progressive rock. And if all I wanted to talk about was a type of music that was not, it would be good for one afternoon.
Sure.
But the reality of it is, and, I probably would put this out to your listeners, the more you learn, the more, the more you sow, the more you reap. And that really kind of became a bellwether for the diversity and then the ultimate sustenance of a career that lasted well over 40 years. That, was like, okay, if you put something in front of me, it may not be my favorite, but by the time we're done, it will be.
Yeah.
That's
how you feed a skill set. I mean, everything that you've described, at its very heart, progressive rock should encapsulate virtually everything else. That's what it should do by its definition. I've been boning up on the latest Pattern Seeking Animals record this week because we're doing the Prog Corner on Sunday. There are such a myriad of styles that band manipulates. From spaghetti western to cinematic styles to pop to straight prog, and that plays into what the skill set that you were afforded by all this early experience. I mean, Glenn, that's just amazing, man. It makes the hair stand up on my arm.
Same
that's
thing happens
so
with
cool.
me with my drumming. I'm progressive rock through and through, but I'll drum straight 80s rock. I'll drum country because I don't know when that skill set is going to serve me. My ability to play a country song will serve me in a progressive rock song, but it will at some point.
The crazy thing about all of this is and I'm not separating out at all from you guys, but in the pro world that I've lived in, I became pretty friendly with Alison Krauss. I'm sure you know who Alison
Oh
is.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Everybody I know was like, how in God's name did Allison wind up with Robert Plant? When I met Allison, she wanted to work with me because I had worked with the Ramones. She was and still is, a huge rock fan
Oh yeah.
in
Oh yeah.
spite of being this bluegrass slash country slash whatever, unfathomably talented, maybe the best singer I've ever worked with. Like, just unbelievable. But, still waters, run deep. I mean, she is a fucking metalhead. She loves, hard rock. That was the thing. And what really opened my eyes, especially coming here meaning right now I'm in Nashville, from New York City, is that there's the face of country, there's a face of everything, and then there's the admiration for, just regardless of the style, great music, great songs, great player, great, even if it's a programmer, even whatever that might be. The three of us recognize greatness, and you may not love the music, but you can absolutely hook your brain into somebody doing something that is remarkable. And I stopped having a favorite kind of music because I knew kind of what we're talking about. I knew that when that shit shows up, it almost doesn't matter.
Right. You just described my relationship with Garth Brooks. I don't care for him, but man, that guy has it down, and he's well known as being a big time fan of rock music. He loves.
I have friends who have worked for Garth for decades, and I've seen him a couple of times. I am not a fan of that music, but I am a fan of Garth Brooks because
he is.
That man is so genuine, and he genuinely loves his audience. You were talking about Allison being a metalhead. I got a shoe on the other foot for you. A good friend of mine, George Corpse Grinder Fisher, the singer from Cannibal Corpse. When he jumps on the tour bus after a show, he's cranking out outlaw country. Wow. That guy loves Waylon Jennings and
never can tell.
Old school country is what he likes to. I mean, obviously, when you're talking about Cannibal Corpse, you're talking about extreme metal. You've got to have a counterbalance, and with Allison, I think that's fantastic. But that's a well-rounded listener. That's a well-rounded individual.
Yeah, you got to know it. I'll go one more with you guys because I think you'll like this. Do you guys know Chris McHugh?
I know who he is. Yeah, drummer, isn't he?
Right. He's he was for many years.
Yeah.
The drummer for
Whiteheart.
Yeah, but wow. But he also played for. You just mentioned his name. My gosh,
George. Waylon.
No.
Garth.
Garth.
Yeah. Did he really? Okay.
So he was a drummer, toured with Garth for many years, was even with Garth when he did the Chris Gaines thing, where he renamed himself.
Yeah.
And I worked and continue to work with Chris pretty frequently. He actually likes to work at my studio down in Muscle Shoals with his cohorts. Mm-hmm. And whenever we're in a room together, he's like, "What's this song? What's this song?" And he'll play like the drums from Heart of the Sunrise.
Ah, cool.
Or he'll play the drums from South Side of the Sky. He'll hit a that intro into it.
Yeah.
And this guy's played on most every Garth record that's come out.
I did not realize that was his name, but that is one of the drummers I use when I show people that just because you're drumming with a country artist does not mean you don't know what you're doing. So I use the drummer for Garth Brooks will drum Garth Brooks, and then on his side stuff, dude, if you've ever seen him play like a solo, it's unreal. He plays to service the song in Garth Brooks, but that's not what he's all about. And so it's crazy. Like what you said, Scott, where the guy from Cannibal Corpse of all places is listening to country music.
He loves him some Waylon. He will jump on the bus and turn up Waylon Jennings to the other guy's chagrin.
But I love what you said, Glenn. I stopped having a favorite genre. I stopped I stopped categorizing. Oh, I like this more than this. You get to where you like it all if you're appreciating it. And I guess it's not like is not the right word. You appreciate what's in each genre.
When the three of us go home, you know what I'm saying? When the three of us are just hanging and shooting the shit, yeah, Close to the Edge does go on. Or,
of course, yes, yeah. Absolutely.
If I need, I mean, it's beyond nostalgia, but if I need some of that, because I'm like, I just got to feel this now. I just got to feel this. And the thing that's amazing to me about some of those really early albums is that they still do stand up musically.
Yeah.
That, you know, I can hear the edits because maybe their editing was not quite as sharp. Their razor blades were a little dull that day or whatever. But the performances, oh my gosh, you know.
Well, Glenn, tell us a little bit about Fame Recording Studios.
So the very short of it is when I was in high school, I had a friend who worked in a movie theater, and that movie theater was showing Gimme Shelter, and I was a big Rolling Stones fan. And he worked in the movie theater. This was before there was cable TV or VHS. You know, the only way you could see a movie was at a theater or if they showed it on television. And we'd go to the theater, and Doug was his name, would leave one of the fire escape doors open, and we just hang out in the balcony and watch Gimme Shelter over and over and over and over again. And we'd talk and we'd annoy everybody who was in the theater. But when the scene came to the Muscle Shoals scene, I'd be with my friend, be shh, shh. And it was where the Rolling Stones were playing over at Muscle Shoals Sound on Jackson Highway. And Jimmy Johnson was the engineer. He was also the guitarist who played on Respect, on the Aretha Franklin stuff, all of that kind of stuff. And I fell in love with Jimmy, like literally fell in love with him. And in my brain, my conversation with my buds, like, oh yeah, I want to play Madison Square Garden. Oh yeah, I want to, you know, travel to Cal. I'm like, I'm going to go to fucking Muscle Shoals, and I am going to meet Jimmy Johnson, and I am going to make some kind of life there. Jump ahead now to 1987, 88-ish. And a good friend of mine was running MCA Records at the time. And he calls me up and he says to me, Glenn, we're working on a Leonard Skinner record and the mixes are not turning out great. I mean, this is between us and everybody who's watching this. The mixes are not turning out great. And we'd really, really like you to come in. And by that time, I was pretty well known for my mixes. I was mixing, like I said, remixes for U2, Queen. Like, it was a good moment. And I really wasn't familiar with Leonard Skinner, but it was Jimmy Johnson who was producing this. Mm-hmm. Like, there you go. So I went ahead and mixed it in New York, and they were down in Alabama. And in those days, you know, you'd send a FedEx, but it would take 2 or 3 days. Turns out, this very long story, very as short as I'm capable of making stories. I get a phone call in the studio from Jimmy. I'd never spoken to him before. He goes, "Is this Glenn Rosenstein?" I'm like, "Oh shit!"
His first, oh shit!
Exactly. So I go, "Yes, sir. Yes, it's Glenn." You know, I like my voice went up, 3 octaves, and he goes, "I just want you to know I've been listening to your mixes," and I'm like, "Oh fuck!" And he goes, Gary Rossington and I are going to be on a plane tomorrow morning. We're coming up to New York. And I'm like, these guys are going to fucking kill me.
They're going to kill me. I'm going to die.
Kill me. New Yorker, Rosenstein. And he's like, I'm like, yes, sir. I'll look forward to seeing you. And he said to me, those are some of the best mixes I've ever heard. You need to show me how you do this.
Wow. That's awesome.
And from that time until the time he passed away, we remained remarkably close friends.
That's fantastic.
Really that is.
Story. What a great story.
And
what a great affirming moment for you to have one of your heroes be like, hey,
this guy was like,
I love it.
Et cetera. And I did, as time went on. So I lived in New York at the time. He was down in the Shoals. I went to visit him down in the Shoals, to work more on that record. And then I did with him, I mixed a Gary Rossington solo album, and I fell in love with the area. But at that moment, Muscle Shoals, it was kind of a dip in their world. So I went to Nashville and really fell in love with Nashville.
Mm-hmm. Nashville's a cool city, man.
Yeah, it is.
Very cool place.
It's amazing. And I've seen it change from a town to a city, but in all the right, all the right ways. It did great. As a matter of fact, once we go offline, I will invite both of you to come and spend some time, if you care to, open invite in Nashville and to. So again, I wound up becoming part of the Nashville music scene, and to a lesser extent, the Shoals, which is only a 2-hour ride from here. But a couple of things happened, including my career and traveling and all that kind of stuff. And I based myself out of Nashville. But you asked about fame.
Yeah.
I got a call. That's how it always seems to work, right? You get a call. I got a call from a company called TuneTrack, and a guy named Rick Currents, who runs or ran TuneTrack in the United States. They wanted to do a drum library in the Shoals area, and they asked me if I would be interested in doing it. And I'm like, unbeknownst to them, I had this relationship with Jimmy Johnson. I don't ordinarily do drum libraries and stuff like that, but I'm like, what the hell? Let's just do it. And we did it at Fame Recording Studio. And I just guess I'm a friendly guy. I befriended those people, and we started really enjoying each other's company to the extent that I bought a house down in Florence, which is one town over from Muscle Shoals, and just started splitting time between Nashville and the Shoals area. So the upshot of it all is, unfortunately, Rick Hall, who was a very well-known producer and absolutely innovated the Muscle Shoals sound and the Swampers, all that kind of stuff. You guys need to read up on this or go see the Muscle Shoals movie, the documentary.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's awesome. Yeah.
Right. So Rick passed away, and this was a little bit over 9 years ago, and I offhandedly said to his widow and his son, Rodney, who I'm now partners with, I offhandedly said, hey, if you ever want to do something, let me know, because you've got Studio A. B is not really doing anything. And they said yes. So we now have Studio A, Studio B, which was where the Allman Brothers were formed, Studio C, which is a mixed room, and a full immersive Atmos room, Studio X.
Yeah, we talked about Atmos.
Yeah. And that started in 2019 with me and them. But I had the house earlier, and we had done the library even earlier than that. But we just hit it off and, fell in love. And this gave me an opportunity to spend more time down there, get to spend more time with Jimmy before he ultimately did pass away. And what a great community. Very reminiscent of Nashville when I first got to Nashville.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Like more small towny, etc. But we've had, my God.
Tell me about Aretha and Otis. That's what I want to hear about.
Original tapes. Come on down. It's pretty wild. I mean, I wasn't there for that, and that was as old as I am. That was way before my time.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, Aretha and all that were in the early 1960s.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right.
It started in 62. The B room was put in 67, and then everything kind of went from there around 2019. But yeah, man, that was kind of the deal. And how I wound up being a partner at Fame would have been by far the most circuitous. Like, how the hell could that have happened? But it did. But it did. It did.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Keeping, not that you're asking, but just keeping as wide as possible, and just allowing no spirituality here, no religion, just allowing it all to like, just no, don't say no. Don't say no to anything.
Right.
Well,
So,
Let opportunities come to you and then take them.
you
Yeah.
only increase your available toolbox. The more you expose yourself to, you've got all these extra, okay, maybe this didn't have anything to do with what I'm doing right now, but back then, but it does now.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was, I knew back then what I knew now. I don't know that it would be remarkably different, but not to necessarily define myself as a thing, and I know you guys do the same. I know you get it. I mean, that's a big part of it. Clearly, our purpose here is not for me to give career advice to anybody, but the reality of it is I only could have had the type of career that I had if I was open to all experiences. And even if it didn't seem like it was going to be something that would have been remarkably beneficial, so what? You know what I
Right.
mean?
It's
So
still an experience. You
exactly.
get to add that to your experience box.
Yeah.
You'll learn, if nothing else, you'll learn not to do whatever it is that you're doing at the time if you don't enjoy it.
And it's also not to say, guys, that there weren't remarkable challenges, tragedies. We all live on this planet. We're all doing, doing our best to get by. The music industry in the years that I've been in it has changed remarkably 7 or 8 times. From it being a business that was driven by 45s, records, then to going to, these epic 2-album progressive rock, then to shrinking again and only becoming dance, and just all of it. Yeah. Doing record after 30 years with these guys, man.
Well, let's before we run ourselves out of time here, what people will probably know you for, who've tuned in before, I wanted them to know that you've got other stuff in your wheelhouse. And before we talk about Ekelin, I want to hear you talk about what you're working on right now. You were telling us before air.
I'm working on 5 different records right now, which is absolute insanity.
Nice.
But I also understand, that the window is closing, and I'm of a certain age. I'm not 51. So I like to do as much as possible. One of the projects I'm working on, believe it or not, is with Brett Cull. And Brett is producing, writing. He kind of is the artist in it. I don't want to say kind of, because if he watches it, he'll say to me, Glenn, why the fuck did you not say it? And it's him, Katie Barbado. And Katie is just this remarkable voice, remarkable writer. And the opportunity for me to work with Katie in a very new relationship, but also continue from where we left off on the double Ekelin record that we did about 1.5 years ago, means everything to me. I use the word love often, so forgive me. I cannot tell you how much I love working with Brett Cull. He is a fucking genius, and he is one of the nicest people on this planet. So, yeah, I would really, any project he would want to do, I am selfishly, no joke, selfishly prodding the guys in Ekelin to do another record just so I could get to do it. And by the way, there's no promise that I'm going to get to do it.
Yeah.
But
oh yeah.
It is that much fun. We really. So yeah.
Tell us about As the World and how you came to it.
One of my favorites.
As the World was their, I think it was, I mean, actually, I do know. It was their only major label release.
That's correct.
At the time, the person who signed them, and this may be a little different than what you guys have heard, but it is probably the truth. They were signed by the vice president of Epic Records at the time, a guy named Michael Kaplan. And Michael and I did a bunch of records together, October Project and Marry Me Jane, and a couple of other things as well. Emmett Swimming, I don't know if you've ever heard of any of these.
I've heard of Emmett Swimming.
Yeah, they had moderate success. October Project did pretty well. Marry Me Jane didn't do badly, but they were not like superstar breakout kind of
Right.
act. But Michael and I really had very similar musical tastes. And he came to me and he said to me, Glenn, there's a record I'd really, really like you to do. We're not going to make a dime on this, but we're going to have the most fun we've ever had.
So he knew that it wasn't going to be a commercial success.
Yeah. He knew that there would not be, and you can be the vice president or you could be the president of a record label, especially a major label, but unless you have consensus amongst marketing, radio, there's a million other people who will go, why are we working this? That's actually what happened to Echoland. So it did have the support of Sony at the outset.
I got you.
And once the record was done, the people who knew who Echoland was at the label understood that this was a really good version of what they heard live. And it was definitely a step beyond their earlier records that they made on their own. But the people who were not familiar with Echoland at Sony, it wasn't that they bad vibed it. It was 1994. Mm-hmm. Progressive rock was the furthest thing from anything sexy that any label person at radio, what radio station in 1994 play Echoland or any progressive rock?
Glenn, I don't know if you were watching our podcast, but I'm the one who said this record was made way ahead of its time. Way ahead of its time.
I do recall that, Chris, and I was really grateful for it. You know, it's tough also because I went on loads of records, and Echoland, and this is the case with every artist, they live and die by the one shot. Mm-hmm. And it was devastating for me because we put a lot of work into it. And Scott, if you have more questions about the creative, I'm happy to answer it, but I kind of wanted to just kind of inform you guys that the Sony thing, it was not completely unanticipated. It might have been unanticipated by the band, but the fact that it was of a certain era that was not progressive rock friendly, right, the odds of it breaking through on any level. And like I said, you know, Michael and I were like, we do this because we love this music. We're not doing this because we're going to make money off of it.
Right.
And to be honest, you know, Michael really put his nuts on the table because in spite of the fact of, you know, he was responsible or he was assigned to Michael Jackson, but also Living Color. Like he had the Allman Brothers, he had some real bands there. And in spite of that, he put his nuts.
Right. He went to bat for Echoland.
And knowing full well that the odds of this getting released, let alone being supported in the way that it needed to be supported, was so it was not a complete surprise to me. But what it did do to the guys in the band, I again, I know I'm using the word love too much, but I fell in love with these guys, and it was devastating for them.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah, they had.
You get your record label; it's a big label. You don't know all the talk behind the scenes. You're doing a record for Sony. You do a record for Sony, and it falls flat on its commercial face.
And what was bragging rights?
Yeah,
for them became an emotional liability.
Right.
So as the world on the creative side, I really loved making it. It took a really long time to make. The technology in that moment was not the kind of technology today. It was not made on a digital audio workstation. It was made on a tape machine. Takes had to be made. Stuff had to be erased. People had to have a good day. If they had a bad day, we had to go home and come back. Right. It was very much made in the tradition of the way records were made in the 70s and 80s. So it was not an easy record by any stretch, but the quality of the musicianship and the personalities of the people.
Oh, it's such a good record.
And I really appreciate that, Chris.
It's as fresh and vital and passionate today.
Yeah, I
Today,
could not agree
I
more.
listened to it today. It's
Wow.
it's as sharp and clean and unique today as it was the first time I heard it when it was brand new.
Glenn, I didn't hear it when it was brand new. Okay, I came to Echoland rather late, and it was a couple of years ago, and I all I can tell you is I remember listening to it. I'm like, God, this is awesome, and I for some reason I just turned it around. I'm like, 1995. What are you talking about? I could not believe that it was from 1995. It felt fresh, like a couple of years ago. Like this is
Well,
modern prog rock.
again, I'm not being falsely humble. I had a remarkably small role, in the making of that record. It was the band, it was their writing,
Sure.
it was their playing. I looked with that band especially. I do different things for different bands because different requirements, different levels of experience. Maybe they're not the best musicians. Maybe we have to hire, a bunch of heavy hitters, et cetera, et cetera. But with Echoland, I felt like I was kind of like the coach of a great football team.
That's awesome.
Like I was made to look better than maybe I really am because these guys showed up. They really showed up to play. And there were times that were difficult because they were writing the most difficult music they could possibly play.
Right.
So, to get it not only correct, but to have some vibe and emotion and, give it character, it took a while. And we did go over budget and we did go over time. But, hey, man, the fact that you guys have enough passion for that project to invite me on here means a remarkable amount to me.
It's much like also like it's great art and it has survived the test of time, really and truly. Modern prog people, a lot of them absolutely love that record.
The thing about Echoland that always has stood out to me over, there's so many great bands coming from that period forward. We're going to ignore the great 70s bands because they're the mothers and fathers of all of this, but you got your Spock's Beards and your Salem Hills and your Flower Kings and all that.
Salem Hill's a good one. Yeah.
I love all of the bands of that period, but Echoland probably second to nobody, but is also right in there, very close at having. Is a very different band. Echoland has this singularity about their sound. It has echoes of Little Gentle Giant sprinkled liberally here and there, obviously, but Echoland has their own thing. The vocals are unique. The writing style is unique. The arranging is unique. The sound of those records, and not just As the World, the sound of their records is classic and timeless. There's not this, they never gave into the huge 1980s reverb kind of nonsense. And as a result, As the World sounds as fresh and passionate and impactful today as it did back then.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's a fantastic.
I mean, both of you guys, again, it's not the Mutual Admiration Club, and I did have relative to the band, I had a much smaller role, in the outcome of it. But that said, I not only hear you, that's kind of what our kind of mantra was while we were making the records. We were not, and oddly enough, 30 years later, I stayed in touch with Brett. And maybe to a little bit of a lesser degree, Chris, just because life goes on.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine from school in Brooklyn that I had not seen for insane amounts of years reached out to me through social media and said to me, "Did you do that Echoland record?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did." And this gal, Sharon, and she's like, "Why don't you work with them again?" And I'm like,
perfect lead in. Perfect lead in.
Like I reached out to Brett and I'm like, why don't we like each other? There was never
there wasn't an acrimonious split or something. We're friends still. So
so I'm like, he's like, well, we're kind of pretty deep into the record. And I mean, I don't know that we need a producer, but we could use a mixer. And I'm like, I don't give a shit.
Send it to me. I'll mix it.
I've produced enough records. I'm producing, you know what I mean? I don't have to be like that title, right? And boy, did we have a great time.
That's the best part. That only makes people call them these. I call it this. It's all one thing. It's inseparable. It makes it so much sweeter knowing how much fun you had making it. It sweetens the wine a bit.
And it's great of you to say. And for people like yourself who are really excellent musicians, you've had your studio experiences. You know what that's like. You know that if we can't make that thing happen in the studio, you're going to hear it in the tracks. At best, it'll sound like something that's programmed. At worst, it's going to sound like shit.
Right.
And the great thing about collaborating with these guys, and even the new guys who came in, new to me,
sure.
Jordan, the drummer, and well, actually, that was pretty much it because Ray played bass, on the new project. I don't quite know, and this is not a bad thing, but I don't quite know where Tom is. I don't know that the guy. I actually didn't ask, but I hope he's out there. I hope he's doing something. I don't think he's working on music. I know somebody on the podcast that I did watch that, the third album thing was asking, where is Tom Hyatt? And I have no idea. But Jordan's a very, very different drummer than Paul. Mm-hmm. And Paul is phenomenal. I liked him so much that I stole him and Brett to do this Gray-Eyed Glances record that I did like a couple of records after that. And, I think they toured with them for years after that. But the upshot of it is that you guys are spot on. It's really simple stuff. You got to be talented. You got to understand how music works together. But when you're in a studio, it becomes the playground. It's the beginning all over again. It's grade school.
Yep.
And if you're tormented and you're teased and you're not in an environment that's cultivating your creativity, your record's going to sound like horseshit. And if you're in an environment where you guys can connect in a way, my God, that stuff, I hear it in the records. I can hear it in Yes records that are both new and old. It's not because I'm an old guy. They had fun doing Close to the Edge.
Yes, they did.
They had fun doing the Yes album. The later shit, they were mailing that shit in.
With one exception.
I like the new album.
The Ladder is an absolutely spectacular album.
I like the new one. I like Aurora.
I like the new one. The Ladder, the songwriting is awesome. Anderson was singing out of his mind. Everybody was playing well and hard. And the producer, the one that passed away during the making, I can't remember his name, Fairbairn, Bruce Fairbairn.
Oh my God.
He actually passed away in the studio as I hear it. John Anderson and Anderson's assistant found him in the studio. He was supposed to show up with some tapes for them to listen to or something, and he didn't show.
Yes,
oh my goodness.
I did a bunch of records at the Armory. He was.
Oh boy.
I will agree with Glenn on one thing though. The earlier Yes albums, you hear the fun.
Oh yeah.
The later Yes albums sound like work. They don't sound like fun.
Yeah.
They sound like they're doing it because this is what we've got to do because we're Yes, not listen to us as we traipse all over our musical playground. Yes.
See, and that's one of the other remarkable, magical things about Ekelund. They still sound like those same guys from the early records. They sound like they're having an absolute blast. I'm in retrospect, the failure at the major label thing is almost a blessing because we wouldn't have gotten all these great other records. I would hate to have seen Ekelund fall into the trap of having to, follow up a commercial success. That's an awful thing to say because you want the successful, talented musicians to make mega bucks. You really want that. Right. But I selfishly, and plus there's the legend of As the World. Everybody in the prog world knows about that major label album that they made. And if you haven't heard of Ekelund, it attracts people like flies. They go, whoa, I got to hear this thing.
Right.
Wow. And again, it's so great to hear your perspectives on it, because I don't live in that world.
Right.
I'm pretty good friends with Derek Schulman, and sort of my disdain for like those later prog records was he was the head of Frontiers Records that put out all that stuff, later versions of, John Wetton's stuff and all of that. And again, huge fan, loved UK, loved King Crimson, all. But my interest in progressive rock solely started fading, both with the change in my career and the stuff that I was listening to, what was contemporary, what I was working on, as well as that the quality of this stuff was not really great. I had a whole bunch of artists after Ekelund's records, after As the World, who came to me. I don't know if Neil Morse will remember this, but he met with me down in Nashville. I think he was living here at the time. And he was talking to me about, was it called Transatlantic?
Transatlantic.
Yeah.
Groin Stolt and Portnoy and Troyvis. Yeah.
Which, hey, in retrospect, I would have loved to have done. It never went any further than him and I visiting, having a good time, talking a few times after that, and it just disappeared, and I was busy, etc. But it was kind of, and I'm not saying that was a bad record at all. I would have done it. I definitely would have done it. But it was kind of that 1993 up until you guys showed up. That was kind of like, I'm like PFM, was a band for, you know what I mean? Like it had to have that thing, Steve. And I don't even know what point I'm trying to make, other than say, it was that thing. But again, guys, it's really, really kind of you. I know, time wise, we're probably running over. I'll go as long as you guys want to. I mean,
well, I think I wanted to give our listeners and viewers a clearer picture of you, and I encourage everyone watching. There's a lot of Glenn Rosenstein that we did not cover. A whole bunch of his career albums that he's won Grammys for. We didn't touch on the Sopranos soundtrack, and there's a whole bunch of things, but. Glenn, maybe we should just do this again.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Let's do another episode later.
Let's do another episode.
Yeah.
This was too much fun.
And 3 and 4 and 5.
Why not?
Well, I'll go one further, and that really assumes that your listeners are really interested in this. I mean, it may not be the right thing but the answer is yes. But why don't we do something?
Well, see, here's the flaw in your thinking. We honestly don't give a damn what people want to see.
Right.
This is about what Chris and I talk about.
Yeah.
We have great conversations, and we have really interesting people who want to come on the show and talk. And fortunately enough people are interested to motivate us to keep wanting doing it. But that doesn't motivate us. We talk about,
oh, Glenn, you're a great guy, but the numbers weren't great. Screw that.
We did our first episode of the Long Tracks and Tall Tales book club last week, and it's failed miserably. It's had 30 views.
Yeah.
But we don't care, because this is stuff that interests Chris and I, and that's the important thing. And so we are interested in Glenn Rosenstein. So there you go.
You to say, and vice versa. Absolutely. Offline, send me, if you don't mind, send me a couple of links of the stuff that you're listening to now that we know each other a little better.
It's funny you should say that, because this is something that I've told people a lot of. In 2019 or 20, when I descended into the songwriting magnetic field, black hole, where I was basically writing an hour plus of material every year, I stopped listening to new prog in particular, because I wanted plausible deniability. I did not want to be influenced by other new prog artists. Now it's sort of relaxing itself a little bit. The new album that we're going to release next June is written.
Wow.
As far as I know.
As far as I know.
That could change. I continue to write stuff, but for instance, again, we're going to be speaking with Pattern Seeking Animals this weekend over on the Prog Corner, which is the show we've been referencing through the show. We haven't said that, the Prog Corner. And I realized their first album was 2019, and I know that album very well. Their second album I knew a little bit, and since then I really have lost track of Pattern Seeking Animals, and I was astonished to find some really good stuff in there. And yeah, so anyway.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not giving you guys homework, but if there's something that you wanted to share, I'd love. Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Scott G. Davis took himself out of the game when it comes to new prog. I did not.
Yeah,
so I have a whole bunch of new prog I can send you to listen to.
So well, we can go as long as you like, as I said, but my last question is, what happened to PFM? Where are they?
Dude, who knows?
I mean, I know that they're kind of like the equivalent maybe of a Hawkwind or a Gong or something like that in terms of popularity, but
massively popular in their home country of Italy.
Yeah.
But just like a lot of those the bands from Italy in the 70s that really rose up and really became very popular, it's hard to maintain that type of popularity as time goes on.
Sure,
and I think that's what happened to PFM. I mean, they still have released some more modern albums, but you just can't catch lightning in a bottle every time you do an album,
And for me, I'll come clean, and Chris knows what I'm going to say here. I have this deformation in my brain pan, and essentially it requires that I have to understand the lyrics.
Yeah.
I'm a lyrics guy. If I can't understand the lyrics, it does not matter how good the music is.
Yeah.
I just can't.
I'm
so attached
over here. I have 6 sections over here of Italian that I don't know a single word what they're saying, and it doesn't matter to me. I absolutely love.
I continue to deny myself that opportunity.
Yeah, we can get back together again. Yeah,
let's do another episode. That way we can just
been a blast.
And invite me to your panels. You could tell I like the sound of my voice, so I'm happy to offer up a contrarian opinion.
Yeah,
I'm happy to represent old school progressive rock.
Scott loves it when people disagree.
Yeah,
he loves it. It fires the numbers. Yeah.
Yep.
He's got a good thing.
He really does, and we love the guy. So,
well, friends, we're going to wrap it up for today. Glenn Rosenstein, go seek him out. His wiki is huge, and it will lead you in all sorts of musical directions that you may not have considered, and it's all good stuff. So, Glenn, once again, thank you so much for your time and your work. We appreciate you very much.
Likewise.
On behalf of my cohort and birthday boy, Mr. Christopher Clark, I have been and continue to be Scott G. Davis of Myth of Logic. Friends, until we are together again, be good to one another.